Okay. So we have a pretty short set of notes today. It's just 2 pages. You're going to have time after our notes to work on your assignment, which is always good because a lot of times you go home and then you thought you understood it and you maybe don't as well as you thought. So if you will cut out, you have 4 charts on your notes pages. If you'll cut out all 4 of those charts separately. Cut out all 4 of those little tables or charts, whatever you want to call them. We're going to do 2 on each page. If you don't have your journal, you're just writing on this paper. You're not actually cutting them out. Okay, y'all can quit being silly. Please. When you glue them down, leave a little bit of space above them because we need to write the 2 equations that go with them. Okay, I don't know what y'all are giggling about. Just need to get control. Okay. So we're just going to do like 4 examples, and we're going to be using these little tables to kind of set those up. It's just going to kind of be your organizational thing. Today we're going to talk about substitution. So while you're cutting out, I'm just going to kind of talk a little bit. Because it's not requiring you to take any notes or anything, so you can still cut and kind of listen. I told you guys I'm going to teach you 4 different ways to solve systems. And do y'all remember what a system is? System of equation is more than 1 equation. Do y'all remember that? Okay, and in our class, we're only going to deal with how many usually? 2. We're only doing 2. Okay, because we don't want to have to get into the more difficult ones. We just want to stick with the easy, basic kind. So we're going to do 2 equations at a time. Okay? I've taught you how to graph, where you graph them and you're looking for where they cross. But sometimes that's not the best option. Because what happens if they cross and it's in between, like it's in the middle of a box on your graph paper? And it's not at one of the little cross spots. So it would be a nice, neat point. What if it crosses at like 8.23 and 7.5? How are you going to figure that out just by looking at the graph? You'd have to estimate, right? You'd have to kind of just guess. Well, so sometimes it's not a good thing to do it by graphing. And sometimes you don't have graph paper, and some of you hate to graph. So maybe all those reasons, it might be good to know another method. So today we're going to do substitution. When I did systems of equations in algebra, this was my least favorite way to do it. But this is a method that you have to kind of understand the concept because you're going to need it in geometry and in algebra 2. Okay? And basically we're going with the concept that if one thing is equal to something else, then you can swap them out. So kind of think of recipes. My husband and I did own a bakery once upon a time. And you can substitute things like, if you need buttermilk, you can substitute regular milk with some vinegar in a recipe and it still comes out the same way. So there's certain recipes that you can do, things like that. Something that might make more sense to you guys is sports, that you substitute people in and out of sports. if you play or if you know much about volleyball or basketball or soccer or whatever. I don't know about soccer because I haven't watched how they substitute in and out. But I know like basketball and volleyball, you have to kind of wait there at the edge of the court. You're not allowed to go on the court until the scorekeeper or the judge or whoever it is writes down who's going in for who. Right? And you don't want to sub in somebody for a position that they know nothing about. That's not a good option. So in basketball, you wouldn't want your power post to become your point guard unless in high school it's a little different because sometimes we have athletes that are very versatile and they're still trying to figure out which position. But when you get to college level and professional level, they're not going to sub those people out. The guy that gets the rebounds is not usually the guy that's dribbling the ball down the court. Those are two totally different positions. They focus on what they need to focus on. And usually the power post is not as great a ball handler as the point guard. Or in more football terms, you don't want your center to become a wide receiver. Right? Most centers are not going to be running a wide receiver route. It's just not going to happen. So things like that. You've got to make sure that you sub in for the right thing, that they're equal to each other. If they're not equal to each other, you can't substitute them. And so that's kind of how we're going to translate this on here. And so you're going to hear me say a lot about subbing in and making sure they're equal. So on the first one, you're going to have two equations. And I'm just going to write one in one color and one in the other color, simply because it helps you see which one I'm dealing with when. That way you'll know which equation I'm talking about. And I call this little table thing, I call this like the sub sandwich, because the two things that are on the ends are going to match, so it's kind of like the bread. And the thing in the middle is going to be the other equation. So that's why it's kind of like a sandwich, because the two things sandwich the one in the middle. You don't have, once you kind of get the hang of this, if you don't like using this table, you don't have to use it. It's just an easy way to kind of keep it separate and organized and whatever. So your first thing, when you're substituting, the first thing you need is one of the equations has to have one of the letters all by itself. Now this says get in y equals. You don't have to have it in y equals. It could say x equals something, and that would be okay. This is just a hint, so if you don't know how to get it by itself, get it in y equals, and then it would be by itself. This example that we've got, they were really nice to us because one of them is already that way. You'll see this one's y equals. Yeah. This one's not so much, but this one is. Since this one's already got one of the letters by itself, that's the bread. So that goes here, and that goes here. So write that equation on both ends. It goes in both end sections at the top. Then write the other equation in the middle. That's like, I don't know, your peanut butter and jelly or whatever kind of sandwich you eat. That's your ham and cheese or something. I don't know. Whatever sandwich you eat. Okay, everybody got that? That's just kind of the setup. And we're going to do that every time. The outside has to have a letter by itself. The inside one doesn't have to. All right, now that means, this right here means that y is equal to x, which means x can sub in for y at any time. If y doesn't want to play this one, or if the coach decides y needs to come out, x can go in because x and y are equal to each other. They know the position the same amount. They're both the same amount of talent. They know this position, so they can go in and out, and it's okay. It doesn't hurt anything. So that means we're going to sub x in for who?
Y.
For y. So draw an arrow all the way up to the y on the next one. Which means this is going to become 2x plus, and instead of y now, that's going to be x, because x is subbing in, equals 3. You don't have to do two colors. I'm just trying to do it so you can kind of see what I'm doing. It makes it a little easier. So now x is subbed in for y, and here's a trick to make sure you did it right. If you look at this step after you sub in, and every letter matches, then you're good. So you see how they're both x's now? I only have one letter to deal with. That's a good thing, because I can solve that. What is 2x plus 1x? 3x. So here I get 3x. Ooh, wrong color. Oh well. 3x equals 3. It's supposed to be in red. Sorry. 3x equals 3. And how would you solve that?
That.
3
the
So
3 is times.
divide by 3.
There you go. So divide by 3. This is from way back at the beginning of the year. So divide by 3. X equals 1. Okay, so if you know x equals 1, you can take that now and finish out this whole cycle, and you're going to plug it in for x up here. So you have y equals, and instead of x, you're going to put the 1. Okay, so when I solve a system, I'm looking for a point where they cross. A point has an x number and a y number. I just figured out an x number and a y number. So I now have the point where they cross. So your intersection on this one happens to be 1, 1. They both match, which is not going to happen usually, but this one it does. That's the point where those two.
Well, you said it won't match.
Not usually they won't match.
Why not if x and y is substitute?
I'll show you on the next one how it changes. Okay, so this one they match. That's the point where they cross, so like this line, and they cross right at 1, 1. That's where they happen to cross. All right, number 2. Y equals 3x, and x plus y equals 8. Are your two equations. Y equals 3x, x plus y equals 8. I need one equation with the letter all by itself. Do I have that already?
Yes.
Yes, which one? The y equals 3x, so that's the bread. Here and here. Which means this one goes in the middle. So this time, instead of y just being equal to plain x, this time y equals 3x. It's like a little bit longer name on the back of the jersey. Okay? So instead of being Lee, this one's Smith or something. I don't know. The jersey's a little bit longer. The name's a little bit longer. But 3x is going to go in for y now. Not just plain x, but 3x. So this subs in right here for y. You got to make sure you sub it in for the right thing. Don't sub it in for x because it'll mess everything up. So that's going to give you x plus, and instead of y now, I've got 3x going in. And x plus 3x is 4x equals 8. By 4, divide by 4. So what's x going to equal? Now, what am I going to do with that, do you think? Substitute it back in, right? So now this 2 is going to go back to finish it out to right there. So I'm going to get y equals 3, and instead of x, it's times 2. Now what's 3 times 2? 6.
Oh, well, that was just for x, not for 3x.
Just for the x. Like that 2 goes in just for the x. So once I have an x number and a y number, then I can write my point. X is 2, y is 6. That one crosses at 2, 6. Okay, so those are two that were pretty easy because they already had one with the letter all by itself. So the next two that we do, we may have to do a little bit more work first, but that's okay. Oh, I should have scoothed that one down. Okay, so number 3. Your equations are x plus 4y equals 1. 2x plus y equals 9. X plus 4y equals 1. And 2x plus y equals 9. Okay, do I have an equation where there's a letter all by itself?
No.
Not on this one. That means I'm going to have to do a little bit of work. Now, you guys have practiced y equals, so if you can get one in y equals pretty easily, that's usually what I will do. But if not, you can switch it around to x equals. Which one of these would be the easiest to switch to y equals?
The first one.
First one.
You said to y equals?
To y equals.
The second.
The second one would be easier to switch to y equals. Because all I have to do on this one is just move that 2x over.
Or do you guys change the sign?
You have to change the sign. So 2x gets moved over. It becomes negative, so this is y equals negative 2x plus 9. So now I have one that's in y equals. That's going to be the bread. That's going to go on this end and this end. And in the middle is this one. Now if you wanted to, you could have switched this one. You could have moved the 4y over and left x here. You'll still get the same answer. You just got to make sure you sub in for the right things.
You have a number with the first one.
I'm sorry, what? On this?
The first box. Yeah, you said that you have to have the letters.
You have to have one of the variables all by itself. So like this one, the y is all by itself now that I fixed it. So you have to pick one of them to get one of the letters all by itself, whichever variable you want. Okay, so right now this tells me that negative 2x plus 9 is going to go in for y. So this is like a much longer name. Are there any baseball people in here? Do y'all anybody like baseball? Seriously? Nobody likes baseball?
I like
Okay. So if you remember back, it's been a while, but this guy named Saltalamacchia played for the Rangers, and his name like went all the way up and around his jersey, like a really long name. Well, that's what this is. It's just a really long name. He's still going to sub in for somebody else. It's okay. The whole thing gets subbed in. So this gets subbed in for y, not for x. So this is going to be x plus 4, and then we got to sub in Salty. Negative 2x plus 9 goes there, equals 1. And I know that looks a little complicated, but if you'll take a breath for a second and look at it, it's really not too bad. Because this is stuff that we did from first semester. Ignore all the rest of this stuff. If I just showed you this equation, what would be the first thing that you felt like you probably needed to do? Take care of the parentheses by distributing. Whoever said that. So you're going to pass out this 4 here and here. So this becomes x, because we're not doing anything to that x. And then 4 times a negative 2 is negative 8 with an x. And 4 times 9 is 36. So it already looks a little bit better. Your next step would be to combine stuff that goes together, and I have an x minus 8x. That's going to become negative 7x plus 36 equals 1.
Don't you gotta subtract by 36?
You do. So now you're going to subtract 36 from both sides. You're going to get negative 7x equals negative 35.
You gotta divide.
Divide everything there by negative 7. And x equals 5. Now some of you might be able to do some of that without writing every step down. But some of you may need to see every step. When I do your notes, I write every possible step I can so that you don't wonder where I got a number. Because I used to have those teachers that would just, there'd be a number up there and they wouldn't tell us where they got it because they did the work in their head. And I'd be so lost. I had no idea what they were doing. So I try to write every step down. But if there's a few steps in there that you don't really need to write, and I can tell that you're doing the algebra work correctly, then that's fine with me. Okay, this now, to finish it out, goes in for x. So now I have y equals -2. And instead of x, we're putting a 5 there. Plus 9. When you get to this point, this is a type it in the calculator and get the answer type of thing. So you just go to your calculator and type in.
You can put it in and y equals.
No, you don't need to put it in y equals. Just -2 parentheses 5 plus 9. Just type it in just like that. On the regular home screen.
-1.
And you get -1. Okay, so once you have an x and a y, you can write your point. Because that's the actual answer. We're looking for the point where they cross. If you don't write that point, then you're going to miss some points on the problem. Because that's the answer that I'm looking for. Okay, that's about as complicated as it can get. Is you happen to switch something around and you happen to distribute. So we're going to do one more. And then you'll have time to work on your assignment. Y minus 2x equals 3. And x plus 2y, okay, it's going to run out, equals -14. There's your two equations. Y minus 2x equals 3. X plus 2y equals -14.
Move the 2x.
Okay, you could do one of two things. I want to show you how to do it with the x. So we're going to do this one a little weird. Instead of switching this one to y equals, we're going to switch this one to x equals. Okay, so I'm going to throw you a curveball a little bit, but it's okay. Just follow me. So just like we would switch it to y equals, if I wanted x by itself, I would move the 2y. If I move 2y across the equal sign, what's going to happen to it? It's going to become negative, just like we've always done. So this is x equals -2y minus that 14 that's already up there. Same thing you've been doing, we're just getting the x by itself instead of the y by itself. So, nothing too mind-blowing, hopefully. Now I have one of them with a letter all by itself, right? The x is all by itself. So that's the bread, that's the one that's going to go over here. Which means this one goes in the middle. Does everybody have it set up? Not quite? Okay. I don't want to rush you. I want to make sure you have time to write it all out. Okay, so what that means is this whole thing right here goes in for x. That's the substitute for x. So I can't just substitute part of it, I have to substitute that whole thing. So be careful because we've been subbing in for y every time, right? Well, this time instead of y, we're subbing in for x right there. So make sure you sub it in for the right spot. So you have y minus 2, and instead of x, you're going to sub in this whole thing. And then that equals 3. So just like the one above it, we're going to have to distribute. And you got to be a little careful because this is a -2 right here. This minus goes with this 2. So this is like -2 times -2. What does that become? Negative times a negative becomes a positive. We're not messing with this y, so I'm going to write that there. Plus 4y. And then again, negative times a negative, right here is positive.
And plus.
So plus 28 equals 3.
Where did you get the 28?
2 times 14.
Y plus 4 to 1.
Sorry, I should have drawn a little arrow. There you go. Okay, you guys see if you can finish that one out. I'm going to freeze it so that you don't see my work. Don't say the answer out loud because that stresses people out. But see if you can finish out, get the y answer, and then plug back in and get the x answer. make sure when you write your point that you do x first and then y, because we found them backwards. X is the last one we found. Y is the first one we found. So if you switched them, fix it. Be real careful on that. Did you finish it already?
Wait, and isn't it still y equals on in the middle box?
Yes.
And we substituted for x?
And then you're substituting it in for the
Oh,
y at the
y.
end. Okay, a few more seconds and I'm going to undo mine and you can see if yours matches. Okay, so if you're finished, look through yours and look through mine and see if they match. If you didn't get this as the answer, go back and kind of look and see where maybe you messed up. Okay, most of y'all get that right? You're fixing it? Because you were completely done and you could check and see? Okay, so before I just let you start working on your assignment, I want to talk you through a couple things on it. You have 5 questions that are substituting like this. I didn't want the whole assignment to be doing this because that would be a whole lot of work. So there's only 5 that are like this, and the rest are review multiple choice questions. Okay, so this homework should not take you too long, and you're going to have plenty of time in class to work on it. You got it yet? Hold on, let me finish giving instructions. Okay, so I want you to look at number 2 on your homework. Number 2 on your homework. Which one's going to end up being the bread of the sub sandwich? The second one, because it's already solved for x. On the homework, the one that says A 6-3. Looks like this.
Oh, it's not over there. It wasn't over there.
Oh, y'all don't have it?
No.
I'll go make you some more copies. Okay, hold on. So on number 2, this one's going to end up being the bread of the sub sandwich because it's already solved. So this one's a lot like the last one we did on our notes, where you have the x equals to start with. I'm talking, so I need you to not be talking because that's rude. Okay, there's also another one on number 4 where they're both in y equals. That's okay. This one's going to be a little bit weird because you're going to have y equals 2x. And then here you'll have y equals, fix that to positive 6x. That shouldn't be negative. 6x plus 4. That just means this is going to sub in on this side right here. And then you move all your letters to the left and you still solve like we always solved. Okay?
Wait, what? You said move all the letters to the left.
Because here you're going to have 2x equals 6x plus 4. So then subtract 6x from both sides. And then finish solving that.
Oh, okay.
Get all the letters together. And then on number 5, switch all the C's to X's and the D's to Y's. I meant to do that and I forgot. I mean, unless you just like C's and D's, just put them in alphabetical order. You should be okay. All right, let me go make, how many of y'all need copies of the homework? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I wonder what happened on my homework assignments. 6.
On number 5. Can you switch the substitution to y?
Can you switch what?